Saint Scholastica stands among the most revered figures in early Christian monasticism, her legacy woven closely with that of her twin brother, Saint Benedict of Nursia. Born around the year 480 in the region of Nursia, Italy, Scholastica's life unfolded during a period of enormous transition and challenge, both for the Roman Empire and for the early Church. Her journey, marked by faith, devotion, and leadership, would pave the way for countless women in religious communities for centuries to come. From an early age, Scholastica's destiny seemed inseparable from that of her brother. The twins were born into a noble Roman family, a lineage that afforded them a strong education and a grounding in Christian principles. While much of her early life remains shrouded in the mists of history, tradition tells us that Scholastica, like Benedict, was drawn to a life of dedication to God. As the world around them shifted, with the collapse of Roman authority and the rise of new powers, Scholastica and Benedict each sought stability, meaning, and sanctity in a life set apart from worldly distractions. Benedict would become renowned as the father of Western monasticism, founding the monastery at Monte Cassino and penning the influential Rule of Saint Benedict, a guide for monastic living centered on prayer, work, and community. Scholastica, inspired by her brother's example and teachings, likewise yearned to devote herself wholly to God. She established her own community of women, not far from her brother's monastery, at a place traditionally identified as Plombariola, near Monte Cassino. In founding her convent, Scholastica became a trailblazer. At a time when opportunities for women to lead and shape their own spiritual destinies were severely limited, she created a space where women could seek God in prayer, contemplation, and shared life. Her monastery was among the earliest of its kind in the Western Church, serving as a beacon for generations of women who would follow in her footsteps. The community followed a rule closely modeled on that of Benedict, emphasizing humility, obedience, stability, and the balanced life of ora et labora, prayer and work. The relationship between Scholastica and Benedict was one of deep mutual respect and spiritual kinship. While Benedict presided over his community of monks, Scholastica guided her nuns with wisdom, compassion, and a profound understanding of the spiritual life. The two maintained a close correspondence, and once each year, according to tradition, they would meet outside the walls of their respective monasteries to spend a day in prayer, conversation, and the joyful exchange of ideas about their shared calling. One of the most famous stories about Scholastica comes from the dialogues of Saint Gregory the Great, who wrote about the lives of Italian saints in the 6th century. In this account, during one of their annual meetings, Scholastica sensed that her earthly life was drawing to a close. She begged her brother to remain with her through the night so that they might continue their holy conversation. Bound by the strict rule of his monastery, Benedict at first refused, insisting that he must return to his monks before nightfall. Undeterred, Scholastica turned to God in prayer, asking that her brother's heart might be softened. Almost immediately, a violent storm broke out, making it impossible for Benedict to leave. Benedict, astonished by the sudden downpour, asked his sister what she had done. Scholastica replied simply, "I asked you, and you would not listen, so I asked my God, and he did listen. So now, go off if you can. Leave me and return to your monastery." The siblings spent the night in deep spiritual communion, and 3 days later, Benedict saw a vision of his sister's soul ascending to heaven in the form of a dove. He knew then that Scholastica had passed from this world into the presence of God. This story, cherished by generations of Christians, speaks to Scholastica's faith, her persistence in prayer, and her deep bond with her brother. It also highlights the equality of spiritual authority that Scholastica possessed. A woman whose prayers could move heaven itself, whose relationship with God was as profound and effective as that of any man. The ministry of Saint Scholastica extended beyond her own lifetime. The example she set in founding a monastery for women inspired the growth of female monasticism throughout Europe. Her community, guided by the principles she and her brother shared, became a model for other convents, offering women a path to spiritual maturity, education, and service. Within the walls of these monasteries, women found a place to develop their gifts, to study scriptures, to care for the poor and the sick, and to dedicate their lives to prayer. Over the centuries, the Order of Saint Benedict spread throughout Christendom, and with it, the influence of Saint Scholastica. Her feast day is celebrated on February 10th, a time when Christians remember her holiness, her devotion, and her pioneering spirit. Art and iconography often depict her with a dove, symbolizing the soul's ascent to God and recalling the vision witnessed by Benedict at her passing. The legacy of Saint Scholastica is not merely a matter of historical record. It is a living tradition that continues to shape the lives of those who seek God in community. Her life reminds us that spiritual leadership knows no gender, that prayer and faith are powerful forces for transformation, and that the bonds of love, between siblings, between friends, between seekers of the divine, can transcend even the boundaries of death. In her ministry, Scholastica emphasized the importance of community, the value of stability, and the necessity of balancing contemplation with action. Her nuns were taught to pray together, to work together, to care for one another, and to serve the needs of those outside their walls. This holistic vision of religious life, rooted in the teachings she shared with her brother, offered an alternative to the chaos and uncertainty of the world around them. Today, the spirit of Saint Scholastica endures in Benedictine communities across the globe. Her example continues to inspire not only nuns and monks, but all who seek to live lives of purpose, prayer, and compassion. She is a patron saint of nuns, education, and convulsive children, and her intercession is sought by those who yearn for peace, understanding, and unity. The story of Saint Scholastica is, above all, a testament to the power of faith. In a time of upheaval, she created a haven of prayer and learning. In a world that often silenced women's voices, she spoke with authority and grace. Through her devotion, she brought others closer to God, and her influence ripples through history, touching lives even today. As we remember Saint Scholastica, we honor a woman who dared to answer God's call, who shaped the course of Christian monasticism, and whose life remains a shining example of what it means to love and serve with a whole and undivided heart. Her story invites us to consider the ways we, too, might bring light, peace, and hope into the world. By following her example of steadfast faith, prayerful persistence, and generous leadership,